Hey, everybody, and welcome to part 12 of the Bible study series. Today, we are diving into chapter 16. And, guys and gals, I got to tell you, this one right here, we are going to start to get into something. Oh, there's a treasure. There's something so awesome in here that's going to start to expand that picture for us. And eventually, we're going to get to this point, just a few chapters where your whole mind, your whole world is going to be blown away. It's so incredible. And hey, we just came out of chapter 15, okay? And we saw where Abram was starting to have some concerns, starting to have some fears about the Lord's promises. Like, how are these actually going to happen? And it was mainly based around all these descendants that God was promising him. Like the stars in the sky, the sands of the earth, too many to count. And he's like, hey, I don't even have a son. How is this going to happen? And he's getting up there, in age to our standards, obviously, and everything. So it's like, man, he was showing just legitimate concern with the Lord. And look at that fellowship, how the Lord approached him there and everything. And just amazing thing what he did there at the end of chapter 15 was such a prophecy and a symbolic sign that absolutely sealed up his covenant with Abram, just like similar to what he did with Noah. In the same way, he said, oh, how can I know for sure? And the Lord instructed him on what to do so that this covenant would be absolutely sealed. And he was going to give him a visual so that he would have no doubt in his mind about what the Lord was saying was, going to come to pass. So, man, this is awesome. And here we go, getting into chapter 16. And it's going to kind of continue, along those lines, and then we're going to hit something. It's something so awesome. So, hope you're excited about it. This is a great one, and as always, please pray before diving into this. And let's just enjoy our time in His Word today. So, all right, here we go. Chapter 16. Okay, first verse. Now Sarai, Abram's wife, had not been able to bear children for him. Okay, so boom, right out the gates. We were just told, we were just confirmed, Abram was reaffirmed, reassured, all that, given a visual sign of everything, even a prophetic symbol, of what was to take place with his many descendants and everything. And then the very first verse of chapter 16 is Sarai, she's not been able to bear children. Something's going on, right? And so, okay, here we go. And it says, but she had an Egyptian servant named Hagar. And so Sarai said to Abram, look, Abram, the Lord has prevented me from having children. So go and sleep with my servant Hagar, and perhaps I can build a family through her. Okay, so here we go. We're getting a little bit of a sense, just like what Abram was feeling there at the beginning of chapter 15. Look, some concern there. And we know that Abram, he was communicating everything with Sarai. Everything that just happened there in chapter 15, and there in the last few verses. He absolutely would have told his wife about all this. And so, hearing all this, right, just like Abram's been receiving it from the Lord, she's starting to feel pressed. She's feeling pressed and worried about the promise of God not happening. Okay, because look what she says right there in verse 2. God, the Lord has prevented me. He has kept me from having children. And so look what starts to happen here is how she starts to trying to take things into her own hands. And so here's where we see a little bit of that lapse of faith, fear starting to creep in and faith beginning to leak out. Okay? And so she's saying, the Lord is preventing me from having children that he is promising you. This because you've been telling me everything that this covenant and everything that the Lord has promised you, and he's preventing me from having those children, okay, from giving you a son, etc. And so she says, go. Here's the idea. Go and sleep with my servant, and perhaps I can have children through her. So, quick timeout. This was not an uncommon thing back then, okay? If a woman back in those times, if she, was barren, if she was not able to have children, if something was going on, and the family, as a family, if they had slaves or servants, a lot of times what they would do is they would present, a slave or servant to their husband in order for that slave or servant to be impregnated by the husband, and the wife, she would be able to have those children. She owned the servant and the slave, and therefore that child would be considered her own, and that's how things happened back then. So this was not an uncommon thing, okay? In Sarai's mind, it's like, man, I hear everything the Lord's saying, but I've got to take care of this, because notice, this is very key. Underline this. She says, perhaps I can build a family. Okay, notice that. That's those one little word is such a difference maker. And seeing her perspective, that train of thoughts. Perhaps I can have children through her. So perhaps I can take things into my hands, and my judgment, my wisdom. Here's how we're going to fulfill all of this. Okay, check this out. The very next thing is that Abram agreed with Sarai's proposal. Sarai, Abram's wife, took Hagar, the Egyptian servant, and gave her to Abram as a wife. Okay? And so Abram, he had sexual relations with Hagar, and she became pregnant. All right? So want to take a time out, because check this out. This is so crazy. If you notice this pattern here and think back to Adam and Eve, and when you start thinking in this way, we look back to Adam and Eve, and how this is going to play out right here. Oh, folks, it is so similar. It's such, a crazy thing. And I love what the study Bible says right here. It says, Sarai gave Hagar to Abram as a substitute wife. Okay, and it says a common practice of that time. So a married woman who could not have children was shamed by her peers, and she was often required to give a female servant to her husband in order to produce heirs. Okay? So those children, they were, that were born to the servant, they were considered the children of the wife. Right? Exactly what we just talked about. And so here we go. Abram, he was acting in line with the custom of the day, but his action, along with Sarai's, they showed a lack of faith that God would fulfill his promise. Okay? And it follows up, it says, Sarai, she takes matters into her own hands by giving Hagar to Abram. And like Abram, she had trouble believing God's promise that was apparently directed specifically toward Abram and Sarai. Okay, so out of this lack of faith came a series of problems, and we are about to get into that. And so notice that pattern there. Notice the theme of, Sarai thinking, making the decision herself, not completely trusting, which again, through the grapevine, we have to think Abram here, man, he's getting all of this, all of the covenant and the signs and everything directly from the Lord. Maybe he wasn't quite communicating that in the proper way or to the degree that it needed to be communicated, because here we go, Sarai, she's having a lapse in faith here, fears creeping in, faith is leaking out, and here she goes, she's taking matters into her own hands and making the decision for herself instead of consulting God. What does that remind you of? Back all the way at the beginning of Genesis here. Okay, and look, then she approaches. So her idea, like taking the apple from the tree and eating of it, and her idea here, Oh, she says, "Here, take this." And Abram agrees. Oh, this seems like a good idea. And so, boom, here we go. And let's watch how this unfolds, okay? So, when Hagar, when she knew she was pregnant, she actually began to treat her mistress, Sarai, with contempt. Okay? Now this is a mistake on Hagar's part. Okay? So again, back in that time, women that could not have children, oh, they were shamed. There was like that bully effect, like, ha ha, look at you, you're a disgrace, to women, to our kind. And so Hagar, when she knew that she was pregnant, oh, she began to rub it in Sarai's face. Okay, and here we go. Here starts the friction. And so in verse 5, then Sarai said to Abram, check this out. Similar to Adam and Eve, watch. This is all your fault. I put my servant into your arms, but now that she's pregnant, she treats me with contempt. The Lord will show you who's wrong, you or me. Okay, so that sound familiar back then? Immediately, oh, when things start going wrong and we realize, man, this was not a good thing. She immediately says, blame toss. Here we go. Nope, this is all your fault. So she blames Abram, for all this. I put my servant into your arms and now she's pregnant and look what's happening. Look at all this friction and everything. This is what you have done. Okay, the Lord will judge between you and I, is what she said. So there's a big thing. All of this is taking place, and Sarai, her good intentions and everything like that, oh, they're going to start to turn sour. So folks, we gotta take this in, that our good intentions do not always equal God's intentions. Okay, and we're going to see, exactly why right here. So Abram, after Sarai approaches him and he gets the bus, the bus run over and everything, Abram says, "Look, she is your servant, so deal with her as you see fit." Okay, and so then Sarai treated Hagar so harshly that she finally ran away. Okay, check out what happens when Abram's approached with this problem now that is taking place. Here's a mistake by Abram. Everyone's making mistakes in this chapter right here. And Abram, going along with this plan instead of, fully trusting in God or even consulting in God, he goes along with it. And then here, when faced with the problem, by his wife, he totally just backs out. He says, "Look, this is your deal. She's your servant. So you handle this situation as you see fit." Okay? Abram should have stepped up right here. He should have done things a little bit differently. Okay? Watch how God will turn this all around. So Sarai starts treating Hagar so badly that Hagar runs away. And here in verse 7, watch this, guys. This is incredible. In verse 7, it says, "The angel of the Lord found Hagar beside a spring of water in the wilderness. And the angel of the Lord said to her, 'Hagar, Sarai's servant, where have you come from and where are you going?' 'I'm running away from my mistress, Sarai,' she replied." Okay, now hang on. Look at this right here. The angel of the Lord. This is the Lord. Look at, we know how God approaches, his people, his children, his creation. Look at how he approaches. And again, notice the similarity here of how this question is posed. Okay, first he identifies her. He says, "Where have you come from and where are you going?" It's such a great question that just is going to make Hagar just hopefully let it all out. Tell me what has happened. Like, I'm giving you the opportunity to say, "Oh Lord, I've made a mistake. and everyone else has made a mistake, and we're in trouble. We need your help. Okay? But she says right here, I'm running away from my mistress, Sarai. And so the angel of the Lord said to her, return to your mistress and submit to her authority. And then he added, I will give you more descendants than you can count. Boop. All right, second time out here, okay? This angel of the Lord, he asks a question. He says, what's going on? Where have you come from? Where are you going? And then look at the authority that he began speaking with right here. He says, one, these are great things right here. Notice this approach. He says, one, return to your mistress. Okay? This is going to require obedience. You're going to have to obey. Okay? Two, submit to her authority. Okay? So everything that just happened, right? Humble yourself. So obedience first, obey, return to your mistress, and humble yourself. You see what this is saying right here? How this angel of the Lord could see straight through to the heart. He could see the whole situation. He could see to the very heart of the situation. And he knew what was best to, the best solution for all this. One was obedience. Two was humbleness, submitting to the authority, right? And humbleness. And then he also has the authority to, and he says, I will give. Underline that. This is huge because of what we're about to read here in just a second. He says, I will give. I will give you more descendants than you can count. All right, guys. Some of the man, is this sounding familiar with a lot of what's happened? Okay, and some of the other conversations the Lord has had and everything. It says, it continues on. Trust me, we'll get there. Hang on to that. I will give you. Ah, it's awesome. Verse 11, and the angel also said, you are now pregnant and will give birth to a son, and you are to name him Ishmael, which means God hears. Ah, such an awesome thing. For the Lord has heard your cries of distress. So everything that was going on in that situation and how badly Sarai began to treat Hagar, and obviously Hagar was crying out. She was in such distress and such pain. This was a horrible situation. It was terrible. And this angel of the Lord says, God hears you, right? So you're going to name your child, your son, Ishmael, because God hears you. For the Lord has heard your cries of distress. He says, this son of yours will be a wild man, as untamed as a wild donkey. Oh, we're going to see that play out. Trust me. Here we go. Notice this. Notice the pattern is that he's saying, I'm promising you more descendants than you can count. And here's what's going to happen with your son. Here comes this prophetic word right here. This son of yours, he's going to be a wild, untamed man, just like a donkey. He will raise his fist against everyone, and everyone will be against him. It says, yes, he will live in open hostility against all his relatives. And folks, the crazy thing, it absolutely happens exactly as it is said right here by this angel of the Lord. Okay, and so get out your highlighter, get out your pens, everything, because here in verse 13, here's where we start to get into something awesome. Okay, this angel of the Lord, right? Thereafter, Hagar used another name to refer to the Lord who had spoken to her. She said, "You are the God who sees me." She said, "Have I truly seen, have I truly just seen the one who sees me?" Okay? She is realizing here that this angel of the Lord, the angel of the Lord, okay? Highlight that. The angel of the Lord, okay, is none other than the Lord Himself. Okay, this is what she's realizing, and this is what she is acknowledging right here. Okay, because we see how speaking with such authority there, and that He's saying, "I will give you." Well, that is so key there, guys. Let that sink in. This is an amazing thing. So I want you to hang on to this. Okay, Hagar goes on to name this place the well of the living one who sees me. Well of the living one who sees me. Okay, guys, I can't express enough to you how key. I hope the treasure is shining for you just a little bit, and you're like, "Wow, that seems like something great's right there." It absolutely is. Okay, and as we go on, we're gonna get to that place where we get to that bombshell type of thing, and I want you to hold on to this right here: the fact that this angel of the Lord, after he came and spoke, approached Hagar. Right after that, she refers to him, okay, as the God, "You are the God who sees me." Okay? And she says, "Have I just seen the one who sees me?" All right, this is a huge, huge thing. Okay, so hang on to that. Obviously, next we're going to be getting into chapter 17 and the next chapters. Whew, it's going to get crazy. But there, obviously, sorry, I got so caught up, didn't even read the end there. Verse 15 says, "So Hagar gave Abram a son, and Abram named him Ishmael." Okay, Abram was 86 years old when Abram was born. So obviously, Hagar returned. She obeyed. She returned to Sarai and Abram under their household. She humbled herself. She submitted to the authority, okay? And she gave Abram a son, and she followed through. She gave what the Lord, what this angel of the Lord, what the Lord was telling her right here. And she communicated it, obviously, because Abram named him Ishmael. Okay, and this is a huge thing, and we're gonna see how all of this plays out. So that's the biggest thing. First, as you reflect on this, you gotta take note of the three big mistakes that happened, in this whole chapter. Okay, and how, yeah, Oz, a lot of this, it mirrors Adam and Eve and all that took place. It's so crazy. But first mistake, Sarai took matters into her own hands. Okay, who does that remind you of? Two, Abram went along with it. Who does that remind you of? He went along with it, but then when he was approached with the problem, he refused to help. Okay, so his was a two-part mistake. And then three, Hagar, she initiated this whole friction, and then she runs away from the problem. She ran away. She ran out of this promise with this family and everything that the Lord was going to do with and through them. So reflect on that. Obviously, notice those mistakes. And again, we talk about when fear starts to creep in, that faith starts to leak out, and how it can lead to such problems. But in our mistakes, in those problems, look at how God, our Lord, responds. Okay, and here particularly, this angel of the Lord that was responding to her, and how this angel of the Lord was responding. Notice that. Notice the authority, okay, and how similar. And then talks about the birth of her son and what he must be called. Okay, that God here, the Lord hears you. and then gives a prophecy about her son and everything that's going to happen. Everything he says is going to happen, it is absolutely going to happen. So after this, she realizes and she acknowledges that this person right here, this angel of the Lord who was just speaking to her, this is the Lord. She says, "You are the God who sees me. Have I just seen? Did I truly just see the one who sees me?" Hang on to that, guys. Hagar, hang on to that. We'll be right back. Pick up and watch how that plays out. Whew. Incredible. Love you guys. See you in the next part.